Good evening. This is Global Insight News. Tonight we are examining one of the sharpest and most dangerous public exchanges of the ongoing U.S.-Israel war against Iran. President Donald Trump has stated on multiple occasions over the past 48 hours that the United States military possesses the technical capability to disable and destroy Iran's entire national electric power generation and distribution system in roughly 1 hour. He emphasized that repairing or replacing such a grid would take the Islamic Republic approximately 25 years. Iran responded almost immediately through Ali Larijani, Secretary of the Supreme National Security Council and one of the most influential voices in Tehran's security establishment. Larijani declared that any American strike on Iran's electricity infrastructure would trigger a reciprocal operation that would cause the entire region to lose power in less than 30 minutes. He described the resulting blackout as creating ideal tactical conditions for Iranian and allied forces to locate, pursue, and engage American servicemen who would be forced to move on foot or in small groups in complete darkness. Larijani added that Iran has no plan to back down and will continue military and asymmetric operations until the United States feels genuine regret for what he termed this grave miscalculation. The Supreme Leader's office and the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps have issued supporting statements in the same vein. They have reiterated that any deliberate targeting of civilian critical infrastructure will be answered with actions calibrated to impose the highest possible economic, military, and psychological cost on the United States, Israel, and their Gulf partners. Let us begin by reviewing President Trump's remarks in greater detail and in the sequence they appeared. In a late-night Truth Social post followed by a telephone interview with Fox News Radio and then a brief exchange with reporters at the White House, Trump said the following: "We could take apart their electric capacity within 1 hour, and it would take them 25 years to rebuild it. So ideally, we're not going to be doing that." He continued in the same breath: "They've got no Navy left. They've got no real Air Force. They've got no functioning anti-aircraft system worth talking about. We're just riding free range over that country right now. Most serious people who look at this say the war is already won. It's only a question of when we decide to stop, when we say enough." Trump then pivoted to the economic dimension. The United States is the #1 oil producer in the world. When oil prices go up, we make a lot of money. We have plenty of oil. We have plenty of everything, so we can afford to be patient while we finish this job properly. These statements were not off the cuff. They were repeated across platforms with only slight variations in wording. The reference to the power grid is particularly noteworthy because it names a class of target that militaries usually discuss only in classified planning documents or in the most private strategic conversations. By putting the 1-hour timeline and the 25-year rebuild estimate into public view, the president is deliberately signaling both capability and restraint. He is telling Tehran, we can do this tomorrow if we choose to, but we are holding back for now. What does such an operation look like in practice? Modern great power militaries possess several layered tools that could achieve grid collapse in a very short window. First, long-range stealth bombers and submarine-launched cruise missiles can deliver precision-guided munitions against the largest generation plants, especially those burning natural gas or heavy fuel oil. Second, air-launched hypersonic or very high-speed missiles can strike high-voltage substations and critical transmission nodes that connect major population centers to the grid. Third, electronic warfare aircraft and cyber electromagnetic teams can inject disruptive code or high-power electromagnetic pulses into supervisory control and data acquisition systems, SCADA networks, that manage load balancing, circuit breakers, and automatic shutdown sequences. A coordinated strike using all three methods could produce cascading failures: power plants trip offline, transmission lines overload and disconnect, distribution transformers explode or burn out, and backup generators at hospitals and military sites quickly exhaust fuel. Within 60 minutes, large parts of the country could be without electricity, water pressure would drop as pumps fail, communications towers go dark, fuel stations cannot dispense gasoline, and command and control networks fragment. Iranian engineers are well aware of this vulnerability. That awareness explains the speed and severity of Ali Larijani's counter-threat. Larijani's full statement, delivered in a televised address and then amplified across state media and Telegram channels, reads as follows: "If the Americans attack our electricity infrastructure, the whole region will go dark in less than half an hour. Darkness provides ample opportunity to hunt down U.S. servicemen running for safety in the confusion. While starting a war is easy, it cannot be won with a few tweets or press conferences. We will not relent until we make you sorry for this grave miscalculation." He then listed several points intended to reinforce the credibility of the threat. First, Iran and its regional allies already possess a wide array of short-range ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, loitering munitions, and one-way attack drones that can reach major population and industrial centers in Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Qatar, Kuwait, and Oman. Second, many of those countries rely on interconnected electricity grids that share transmission lines crossing national borders. A strike on a key interconnection point or a major substation in one country can produce voltage instability or frequency collapse in neighboring systems. Third, several Gulf states depend on large natural gas-fired power plants and desalination facilities that are themselves vulnerable to precision strikes or sabotage. Loss of power would halt desalination, leading to acute freshwater shortages within days. Fourth, U.S. military bases across the Gulf, Al Udeid in Qatar, Naval Support Activity Bahrain, Camp Arif Jan in Kuwait, draw significant electricity from host nation grids. A regional blackout would force those bases onto backup generators, which have limited fuel endurance and create logistical bottlenecks. Larijani's phrase, "hunt down U.S. servicemen running for safety," is deliberately graphic. It evokes images of special operations teams, proxy militias, or even civilian irregulars moving through darkened urban areas or desert terrain to locate isolated American personnel who might be trying to reach extraction points or safe havens. The Supreme Leader's office reinforced the position later the same day. A statement released through official channels said that any deliberate attack on civilian infrastructure would be met with a response proportional in scale and impact, including sustained operations designed to impose lasting strategic costs. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps added its own layer. The Strait of Hormuz remains closed to vessels serving the aggressors until the aggression ceases. No tanker carrying oil or products to the United States, the Zionist entity, or their accomplices will pass safely. That partial blockade is no longer theoretical. Over the past week, tanker transits have dropped by more than 60%, according to shipping trackers. Several vessels have been struck by drones or missiles, set on fire, or forced to drop anchor outside the strait. Insurance premiums for Gulf voyages have risen to levels that make many trips uneconomic. A number of major shipping lines have invoked force majeure clauses or rerouted around the Cape of Good Hope, adding 2 to 3 weeks to delivery times and increasing fuel consumption. Oil prices have reacted accordingly. Brent crude traded above $100 a barrel earlier this week and remains in the mid to high 90s even after the coordinated release of strategic reserves. The United States has drawn down 172 million barrels from its emergency stockpile. The International Energy Agency has activated 400 million barrels of collective emergency stocks among member countries. Despite those historic drawdowns, the forward curve still prices in a substantial risk premium because traders do not believe the current level of disruption is temporary. The Trump administration's response to the oil price pressure has been twofold. First, it has maintained that higher prices benefit American producers and therefore the U.S. economy overall. Second, it issued a narrowly tailored 30-day general license, allowing the delivery and sale of certain volumes of sanctioned Russian crude and petroleum products that were already loaded onto vessels before the latest tightening of restrictions. The Treasury Department stressed that the waiver covers only those specific cargoes and does not authorize new purchases or loadings. Critics in Europe and Ukraine have called the decision a partial capitulation that indirectly sustains Russian war revenues. We now return to the core exchange about electricity infrastructure. President Trump's one-hour claim is grounded in observable military realities. The United States maintains a global network of stealth bombers, long-range cruise missiles, submarine-launched weapons, hypersonic prototypes, and persistent cyber electromagnetic capabilities. Israel contributes its own deep penetration strike aircraft, precision-guided munitions, and advanced cyber units that have previously disrupted Iranian systems. Iranian planners have spent decades hardening military command centers and nuclear sites against exactly this kind of attack. Civilian power infrastructure, by contrast, remains comparatively soft. Many generation plants and substations are above ground, clustered near population centers, and dependent on imported parts for transformers and control systems. A successful strike package could produce rapid, widespread collapse. Larijani's counter is equally calculated. By framing the response as regional rather than purely national, he expands the deterrence envelope. He is telling Washington that an attack on Iran's grid will not remain an Iran-only problem. It will become a Gulf-wide crisis affecting oil-exporting allies, desalination-dependent populations, and American forward-deployed forces. If both threats are carried out in sequence, the consequences would be severe and long-lasting. Inside Iran, no electricity means hospitals lose power, water treatment plants stop, food spoils without refrigeration, fuel stations cannot pump gasoline, cell towers go offline, and government authority fragments as local commanders lose communication with Tehran. Across the Gulf, blackouts would halt desalination plants that supply most drinking water, shut down export terminals that load crude onto tankers, disrupt financial centers in Dubai and Riyadh, and force military bases onto limited generator power. Global energy markets would face the most acute supply shock since the 1973 embargo. Insurance markets would freeze, shipping companies would refuse Gulf voyages. Alternative routes around Africa would add massive time and cost. Strategic reserves would be drawn down at an accelerated rate, while new production from non-Gulf sources would take months to scale up. Neither side has yet pulled the trigger on this level of infrastructure targeting. Trump qualified his statement with, "Ideally, we're not going to be doing that." Larijani presented his warning as a conditional, reciprocal response. But the public nature of the exchange changes the calculus. Once named as a target, the power grid becomes a focal point for planning on both sides. Deterrence becomes more brittle. The margin for miscalculation shrinks. We are now monitoring for any indicators that either side is preparing to cross this line. Unusual activity around substations, heightened air defense postures near generation plants, increased satellite reconnaissance over Gulf power corridors, or sudden movements of short-range missiles and drones toward Western Gulf states. Every subsequent strike package will be scrutinized for whether it includes energy sector targets. Every Iranian missile salvo will be watched for signs of pre-positioning against regional electricity nodes. This is no longer a war fought only with bombs and missiles. It is increasingly a war fought with the threat of darkness itself. This is Global Insight News. We will continue to follow every development in this rapidly evolving story. Thank you for watching. Good night.